So we've got Andrew all set up. Now, let's talk a second about find. All right? I know that I have a minister in here. Forgot about being patient. Shouldn't have done that. When it's done closing this window, there we go. So I know that I have at least one minister in here. I actually know I have a couple. But I need to see who all are my ministers. To do a find, I probably should do this a little bit better. Over here on the left, if you click find, it's going to bring you a drop-down window or a little drop-down thing up here. And it might already be there in your window. If it's up there in your window, you don't need to click find. All that find button does on the left is bring that down. What happens then, when you click this, it says find records where. Think of how I'm searching. Now, this, you can turn that just a little down. Did you hear it ring? I am a mover. This is going to be every field that you could search on in the individual record, which is an exhaustive field, like everything. All of these different things. See, that just keeps going. So if I wanted to search for, I don't know much, but I know they're a minister, pretty sure they're a minister, I want to search for that. I can scroll and find minister, or up here where it says search all fields, I can also type in, and it narrows that down for me, okay? Because these windows have a lot of different search options, so narrowing it down does help. So if you type up there, it narrows it down, and here I could do minister. I could search for minister's file number, their voting number, PIN, anything like that that has to do with men. And so when I click that, I want to do minister equal to either no or yes. So in other words, I don't have them checked, or I do have minister checked. And so when I click yes, and then I click find, it's going to give me everybody in the database that has minister, that box, remember we talked about, checked. And there are my 3. And these 3, let me go to, patience. These 3 have this minister box checked right here, okay? That's why they pulled up. So if I wasn't sure and I wanted to pull up by last name, I could click that drop-down arrow. I could do last name. And if I'm not sure how they totally spelled their last name, but I know it's got something like, whatever in it, I can change this from equal to, well, this is not equal to. Let me go to last name. Instead of equal to, there are all these options. Not equal to, greater than, but contains is what I tend to go to. You could do begins with, and begins with NEL, and it gives me every last name that begins with NEL. Contains, and I type in LS, it's going to give me anybody with the last name that contains LS. So when you're searching, just think, what do I know? I tend to lean on the more contains than I do equal to, because especially depending on what I'm searching, because there are a lot of times that maybe it just wasn't typed right, or there's a typo, or I am misspelling it, but I do know it kind of has this spelling, so I put in what I know is spelled right, not sure how they end it. That's why I tend to use contains more, is for that. Again, doesn't matter, but if you hit equal to, you type in NELSO and you hit find, guess what? Nothing's going to come up. If I hit contains and I do that, it's going to give me anybody that has NELSO. Does that make sense? It's just, again, I'm big on helping you guys understand ways to troubleshoot things. I clicked find, nothing came up. What's wrong? Okay, well, let's think. What am I searching on? Maybe the name isn't spelled that way, but I know it is. I'm sure it is. Are you, though? Because it didn't come up. Try contains. Oh, there you go. You didn't put an S in the name. You see what I mean? So it's just ways to think. And as you see how the system is flowing, which I hope you're starting to see how in membership side, how it's all flowing together. it makes it a little easier to try to piece together, why did that do that, or why didn't that do that? And so in this case, we could have done Nelson, and it would narrow this down and give me just Jake or myself or anybody else in the system that has the last name equal to Nelson. Okay? For what we're going over right now, in here, you can change your titles, you can set those, the Reverend and all those types of things. We're going to leave it as it is because what I really want to focus on is this right here. Because he is selected as a minister, know that it's not his file number, because for the life of me, I can't remember, and I'm pretty sure that's an older number, and he's not that old. He's only 47, so, which actually does seem crazy. But here's where you can put in some of that information, all right? This was that tab, if you remember when we were working with Andrew, who was not a minister, was deactivated, right? Because this is information that only pertains to a minister, and you guys know this. But this is where you fill out that information. Are they take voting season? It's going to be not this year, next year. Okay, I'm like, I didn't think I skipped a year. But when that time comes, if you've got some who you know are ineligible for voting, this is where you would go to mark that, and so on. Minister's file number, what their rank. Do you remember in the master coding system, I talked about that rank, and when they go to change things, if they ever did again, that you could change it. This is where that list, again, is pulling from, master coding system. Well, if I forgot to put something in here, and we wanted to put non-licensed minister, what can I do? Do you remember? We've done it several times. I can just type it and hit tab, and it gives me that beautiful box that we've seen several times. It says, this doesn't exist. Do you want me to add it? And you can say yes, and then it gets added. Just thinking of it that way. So he's there. Now, if he, goes up in rank or something, you can set that in here. That's where to me, that's where for us, let's back that up, where I was at that time, the notes is where we would put, went up in rank on whatever day, and so on. And again, you can set your own system. I recommend a consistent one and use that, for that. Ethnic code, if you got codes in there, when they start reporting, when the credentialing date was, and so on. They retire, they become excluded from reporting, and stuff. You can go right in here and click that box. It still maintains their information. But when you go to print reports and stuff for like missing reports and all that, which we'll talk more about on Thursday, they won't show up as a minister who has decided to just not report for 6 months because they're marked as excluded from print reporting and so on. Any questions so far on this? We're not going to go into the manual voting thing because this is not the year for it. When it comes voting time, you can reach out to us. We do the electronic voting that we can come to your state and run that for you. And there is the manual as well. So because of time's sake, we're just not going to dive into some of those types of details with that, just because we can help you. And if you do electronic and you have us do it, we can help handle that for you. Okay? And we're going to uncheck that. When we get in and you see that he has some minister's reports and everything, then you can click that minister's report there, and it's going to jump you to his reports that have been submitted. And again, put a pin in the questions as far as that goes. We'll address the reports and stuff on Thursday. But it connects it all together that way. So it's not that it's hard to input a minister. It's not hard to, adjust something or change something. What are some key things? You need to make sure your minister has their minister's file number in there, not because, it doesn't work, but because you need to know their minister's file number. Make sure that's right. But the biggie, what makes them a minister in CDM? Does anybody want to take a guess? That box, yep. That minister's checkbox. This makes them a minister. So if you're doing reports and they don't show up on that report and you just said all ministers, or you're doing a fine in the window and you tell it to do ministers equal to yes, and this person doesn't show up and you put them in the system, did you check the minister's box? Or did you check it and they were a minister and somehow the box got unchecked? It happens. Think, what makes him a minister? Checking that box, and so on. Okay? And so because of that, then when I go to, over here. In the position, that's pastoral, not position. I can read. Where did it go? Church. That's when, let's say he's showing here, he's a pastor of this church, and he begins there. Now, what if he stopped pastoring there? And he moved churches. Please don't delete this line from there. Now you've lost history. Now you don't know where he's pastored before. You know? Or you don't know when he started pastoring and ended pastoring. You know? Now what if, and let's take this for anything. You got, we put Andrew, who wasn't a minister. He's not a senior pastor, but he does carry a position in the church. He's a youth, let's say we had him as a youth pastor. They wanted a list of youth pastors. It's been however many years down, and we're going just trucking away. Yeah, I got that. I got all these updated, with all the new youth pastors that are there, and you print, and the list is like this. And you're like, what happened? Unless you put an end date right there, they're still the pastor, according to the system. So thinking of systems, when they move churches, put an end date. When they change youth pastors or music ministers or whatever position that you have, and the church does think about coming around to tell you that they've updated their information, because I am pretty sure, and I am absolutely guilty of this, thinking about it, they definitely do not have our updated information for our new youth pastors. Hands down, they don't. I won't tell you how long they've been a youth pastor, and I haven't updated them. And I worked at a state office and would preach to do that. That's kind of sad. But anyways, so let's just say he stopped pastoring in 22. Okay? But now he's doing another church. And he started there on January 1st of 23. Okay? See how I have history now? But where else do you think I have the history? And that church record. So in your church record now, I can see in the past members of Woodlawn that he used to be the pastor, and here's when it ended. No matter the position. But in this case, we're doing it as senior pastor. So if we go to church record, because I have just a couple churches. What was it, Woodlawn? When I go here, this gives me a lot of information that I need. Their name, what position, when they stopped that position. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they've left that church. In this case, I would hope. Well, I guess not. My dad still attends ours. But it just means they're not doing that position any longer. Okay? So if Andrew decided he didn't want to be a youth pastor anymore and stuff, I could go in here and put the end date, or into his individual record, put the end date for his position, and it tells me when it stopped. And he's still a member, but he's a past, under past members, you can see the history of the positions. Because if you notice, well, it's got me right now as the member. Any questions on end dates? I can't stress to you enough that when they go and they change positions, they move churches, put that end date. And if you can't figure out why in the world your list just doesn't seem accurate, go look. Chances are you don't have the end date there. Okay? Yes, ma'am. The question is, how do you handle your retired ministers? So if they were pastoring, obviously you put them with an end date. If they attend, so let's say my dad retired, he's not pastoring the church, he's still at the church, but they want to know maybe that he is, maybe he carries a different position. Like if you want to keep track of active retired people in that church, you could create a position for it if you wanted to. Again, this is that you do what you need. I would mark him as just retired, put him in a group as retired, you know what I mean? And then just, you have to put the end date for the position, obviously, that he's in. So chances are, if I was to look at Ohio's database, there would be the end date for when he was a senior pastor, and he would just be a member of the church with no position. He just belongs to the church. Kind of like what I do with this church here. I just belong to this church. I'm a member. I don't carry a position. But Jim is the music minister of this church. So if you wanted to see retired pastor or whatever, you could do this. That's more state office systems, how you guys want to track that. I don't want to say I don't recommend that. It's not that it's wrong. But you could do that. But the biggie would be right in here in your groups. Oh, I'm in the church record. The biggie would be right in here in your groups. You could have something like a roster for retired ministers. That's what we would do. And we would mark them as retired minister, and then we put notes, obviously, in there about when they retired and so on. And if they're still reporting, you would not mess with any of that.
Would you do a group for deceased ministers as well?
I mean, you can do. So the question is, would you do a group for deceased ministers? You can. You don't have to. You can just, put a filter if you need to do a report. I think the key would be what kind of, would I need a report on that? And if so, do I want to figure up a search for it and save it? Go for it. If I just want a group for it so I can just quickly grab it right then, or anybody can go in and grab it, then create a group for it and pop them in that group. But you got to remember though, when they're deceased, what box do we check? Do not print. So if I went to print a report for the deceased ministers, I select that group and I hit print, what happens? No records found. So that's where, and I'll show you in a minute, that's where you would go and tell it to include those marked do not print. That way then they'll print out, because don't forget, we mark them to not print on things, mainly because, we want to kind of filter that out there. And again, it's not wrong to uncheck that. I highly recommend checking that when they're deceased. So there are different ways you could do it. I think the key is, what would you use that for? For deceased ministers, would you need it for a report, or are you good? If you need to search on somebody with a death date, you can do the search with, that they're deceased and were a minister or what have you. You can do those things. There's a lot of different options. And again, think, what do I have in this window? What information do I have? Okay, how do I piece that information together? That being said, let me show you something. When we're searching here, when we're doing a find here, there's only one thing we can search on, right? We can't search on anything else. So if I need to search, I want all ministers for a specific church, just for the sake of doing that. And I wanted to just see that in the individual record. I can do an advanced find search that allows me to do more than one thing. And listen, those who love to just play with advanced stuff like this, it's a blast. But you can do an advanced search. So I want ministers equal to yes. Up here it says and. And I want church equal to, what does it say? Woodlawn. I don't know if I got more. We'll see. So I'm telling this system, give me all your ministers that are connected to Woodlawn. If I was to change that to or, I would say, give me all your ministers.
Sorry, I can't make changes to your contacts.
Apparently, Siri can't do that. It's a good thing, right? He's always listening. But if I change that to or, then what I'm telling the system, I want all my ministers, if I want an individuals who are either a minister or they're connected to Woodlawn. Does that make sense? So talk it through. What I do in my brain, I talk it through. Okay, what do I need? I just want all the ministers that attend Woodlawn. So minister equal to yes, and this church. So they need to have both criteria on their record for it to pull out. You could, we're not even going there on the amount of stuff you could do. It's insane. It's really cool. I've worked with some of you. We've created some pretty intense advanced searches, and it's a blast in some weird, twisted way. It's great. But for the sake of this, we're going to just do these two. So now, because I needed to search on two things, I clicked the advanced find. I set these things up. If I wanted to save it because it was this crazy advanced search, I can click, tongue-tied, save searches and save it. And so then I can come back and do that, and it'll open it. So I don't have to redo the search every time. You just click Save New Search, our little windows here. Woodlawn ministers. Actually, let's do church ministers, because then it might not just be Woodlawn. So now it's saved it right there. So if I don't have anything in my search, like here, and I knew I needed to get that crazy advanced search that they helped us do, and I finally got it, and it's working. It's pulling like all kinds of crazy things. I don't want to have to do that again every month. So I can go to saved searches. I see my list of searches. I can double click it, and it's going to load up that search. And there they are. But I don't need it for Woodlawn. I need it for another church. We'll just click on that drop-down arrow and select a new church. You're not necessarily saving for a church, so don't go in and save one search for each church. It's the search that you're saving. Okay? So then when you click OK, you'll see how it tells you that you're kind of doing this advanced find. So up here, find records where minister equal to yes and church equal to Big City Woodlawn Church. Okay. And here are my two people. Any questions? It definitely opens up a massive possibility for searching. And that said, if I've done that and now I want to print a report from this search, I can click on here instead of going into the report, grabbing the search again and doing it that way. I can choose from a list of these reports. I can do individual labels. There's just this whole list. While I'm in here, I could do it from selected record or results list. This makes a very big difference, doesn't it? Because I only have one record selected. I have I have Jake's selected. So if I was to print this report and I didn't change that to results list, I'm only going to get a label or what have you for Jake, not everybody that I just did this cool search for. So if I do results list, then I'm going to get it for everybody. You cannot add to that reports list. These are hard-coded, just some reports that you can pull. It is not every single report for individual records, but it is a great list. But notice when you're in this report, let me just try to zoom this in a little. You have three options now. You don't normally see three options when you go to the reports, do you? Normally, just standard and advanced. Here, it's going to give me the results from my window. So how many times, and I know that it happens, maybe not from you guys who are in here because I've dealt with it though. How many times do you get the search right and you see them all? You go to on your individual records. You go to print the report and you can't seem to get that because you're trying the search again, or you're clicking on this, but you're not finding it the same way. I've talked to people who do great advanced searches to find things on the individual records, and it's working. But then they go to the reports, and they can't figure out whatever to do it. Well, use this report button on that. You've already got your people. Don't take the extra step to do that again. Again, we are all about saving time, right? Because we can get more work done when we can save time. Well, if I spend the time building it here, I don't save it. Then I go to the report, and I hope to remember what I did in building it here because I didn't save it, and then I can't get it, but I do get it here. Click the report. It's going to give me. Or I got it, but I only need these few people. Highlight those few people, hit selected record, and it's going to give that to you. Does that make sense? It's so helpful when you know that you can do it from address or individual or church records, and then pull the reports from here. Now, if I click on standard search, I'm going to see my options, and I can choose, from all of the things. But when I hit print, it's not going to print what I just had on the individual record. And here's why. I'm telling it now, print from this search. Don't print from my window result. Print from this search. Or I've created a great advanced search, and I want it to combine them both. Whoa, wrong way. So you guys can actually see here. I want it to combine them both, and I got it great. I think I do, what have you. Let's just do it real quick. This window apparently is very long. So we'll do our saved search just because it's in there. So I got the search in, and it's great. I click over here, and I print the directory. It's not printing my search. Why do you think it's not printing your search? You told the system, print the standard search. If you've created an advanced search and you want to print based off of whatever you put in for that advanced search, you need to have advanced search brought forward because now I'm telling the system, print from my advanced search. Or print from because we have it, because we pulled it over, print from the Windows results list. And then it's going to print that report. Any questions? I wanted to show you how you can bring things over with the reports. It was so helpful to us to be able to do that. And then I get calls a lot if they set the advanced search up and it doesn't print because they're on that standard search tab, or they think they've got it, they can't understand. Whatever, think of it this way, and this is across the board in the system, especially with like accounting and stuff. What you're telling it, it's what it's going to do. Sometimes we overthink systems, right? We overthink them. It's going to tell you what you put in. It's going to print out. It can't print out any more than what you put in. And it's going to not know that you don't want the Windows results list on there. You want the standard search. It doesn't know that if you don't click the standard search and have that brought forward, right? What you tell it to do, it's going to do. If you're not telling it to do it, it's not. So if you have this standard, so you get doing things, and because I know my report window doesn't normally look like this isn't right, I'm going to click standard search so I can print. Well, what happened? They told me that I could print that window result list. Why is it not working? You didn't tell the system to do it, did you? You started to, and then you went in and you changed it to standard search. Now you told the system to print standard search. Whatever you tell it, it's going to do. And so that window results list is going to give exactly what was in that window. So don't overthink some of this kind of stuff, because we get little, especially when windows change their look a lot of times. Oh my goodness, when we went from who was here when we went from 9 to 10? And all the buttons went from here to here. The amount of calls sweet ladies would call me in an absolute panic because nothing is working on their program. And I'm like, and then I look and notice they just upgraded. There's a change. It's not working any different. It just looks different. That doesn't mean that the option to add do not print is missing. Click your buttons and you'll see. Let me show you what I mean. So we have this search here. Remember when, so we have these different options for individual directory. So in here, any report, let me back up just a split second. Any report in the system, I tell people all the time, first of all, play with the reports till you find the one you really, really like. I have a couple of go-to ones for certain things. But just the search isn't going to give you everything you need. The search tab or button in the report is who. Like, I want ministers that attend Woodlawn. But different reports have different options under some of these buttons. So like if you do